9 to noon on News 95.7. Now, here's Andrew.
Years ago, Charles Manson sent his disciples to the home of the former record industry executive Terry Mulcher. Mulcher wasn't there. Instead, the home was being rented by the Polanskis. And Roman Polanski happened to be away when Charles decided to unleash his Manson family, quote-unquote, on the unsuspecting and innocent people in the home. They were butchered, and more murders ensued after the Tate murder. Folger, the Bianca murders happened after that. And 40 years ago this week, the world awoke to the grisly murders, senseless murders created by a drug-induced cult leader and madman, Charles Manson. Manson did not commit the murders himself. He committed others and was given a life sentence for his complicity in the murders. Conspiring is the same as killing. Joining us on the line is Paul Fitzgerald. He is the publisher of Thursday Night Magazine, where the Charles Manson interview can be found, and Ro Hurley from Dallas, Texas, is the journalist for Thursday Night Magazine that conducted the interview. We have some exclusive tape of Charles Manson, courtesy of Thursday Night Magazine, and I want to play it for you. And Charles Manson doesn't make any sense, so there's no sense me even setting it up. Here's some more of Charles Manson.
Too many people. What are you going to do? You know, if you don't get rid of a couple million here and a couple million there, you're going to be starving to death, man. You know, your children ain't going to survive. It's like there's a lot of people that are trying to destroy you by breeding. They got your breeding cycle broken. You know, they're like a wren. They're like the birds. They fly and live with birds and animals. They're animals. You're breeding humans for human consumption. We don't care about no people. People got to go, soldier. We're after air and water, trees and animals. There's no such thing as hope. Doubt needs hope. Doubt and hope dance together in fear.
Ro Hurley, what do you make of that?
Well, you know what? You can actually. It's really hard to tell exactly what he means to say. In a sense, I kind of thought maybe he was talking about being pro-abortion, but in hindsight, after I talked to him, I thought, well, maybe he's talking about minorities and saying that they breed too much. I don't know. I think he's got the basic ideas that were overpopulated and such, and he's kind of distorted it to benefit whatever his thoughts are. So I'm not quite sure what exactly he's trying to say, but...
Now, there's a lot of people in the 60s. Dennis Hopper in Apocalypse Now played the crazy, whacked-out 60s hippie type. There's a lot of people that sounded like Charles Manson does now, still do today in California. But a lot of people didn't make any sense in the 60s.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that, Paul?
Well, you know, I have to say I was born in 1970, so I never lived the 60s, but I lived the 80s, and that's a whole other story. I'll tell you about that on some other show. But I think, you know, overall the 60s was a period of a lot of change. It was a period of war. It was a period of, you know, dramatic change, really. And I think not only we saw it in Charles Manson, but we saw it with governments. We saw it with feminism. We saw it with black rights. We saw it with a lot of things. So the 60s was a period of a lot of change.
Ro Hurley, let's talk about the sexuality of Charles Manson. Manson used sex for power with the women in his cult. That was part of the free love 60s. But let's talk about the using sex to get his way with both the music community and Dennis Wilson, the Beach Boys, and other things.
Yeah, actually, that's true. That's how he first hooked up with Dennis Wilson, was by sending some of the female members of the family to Dennis Wilson's place for a massive orgy or something like that. He knew the power of sex. I mean, he used it to his benefit, and he used it effectively, in a sense. I mean, sexuality was a big power trip for him, and he not only used it to benefit himself, but he used it to get into other people's lives as well. So he was a master manipulator in that area.
Now, he was charged with raping another man when he was younger. What was the sexuality of Charles Manson?
I've never talked to him about his sexuality. I've tried to, and he's kind of diverted the conversation, but I believe him to be bisexual. The whole free love mentality meant love everybody, you know, and I don't know, maybe he definitely didn't have respect for women. Maybe that means he's gay, I'm not sure. But I don't know, either he was bisexual or he was neither, you know? Now,
Charles Manson was the product of a 16-year-old mother whom he never saw, who rejected him pretty much his whole life. So a lot of his, you know, although I don't know how far you can psychoanalyze someone who's that far gone.
Yeah.
Was Charles Manson claimable? Was there a point where society could have made this person functional? Or was Charles Manson's insanity something that is unthwartable?
I absolutely do not think he could have ever been functional by our definitions in society. I mean, when you think about it, his home life, his mother was an alcoholic. She was a thief. I think she was a prostitute. That's what I've heard. As a teen, he was getting into trouble. He was a thief. He was a pimp in his early 20s, pimping out women in Texas, pimping out women in California. It's all he knew. I mean, he was brought up that way. I don't think he could have lived any other life other than a life of outside of society.
Is there anything that we can learn from the Manson saga?
Raise your kids right. Don't let them be weak-minded, you know. I mean, and I actually I think it's funny that he was a Scientologist, or that he claimed to be a Scientologist in the 60s, because now they're allegedly the ultimate cult, right? So, I mean, there's something to be said in that. I mean, just raise your kids right, love them.
And you're talking, I mean,